Well, particularly for somebody who was famous for saying I'm a lady on television.
David Walliams spent a decade building something most entertainers only dream about: genuine love from the public. Not the polished, PR-managed kind, but real warmth, the kind that comes from watching someone laugh at himself, root for underdogs, and show up week after week on one of Britain's most watched television programs. And then, in the space of a leaked audio recording, all of it collapsed. What he said behind closed doors during the filming of Britain's Got Talent in January 2020 stripped away everything the audience thought they knew about him, and what followed, the legal battle, the settlement, the mental health confessions, and the quiet rebuilding of a career, tells a story far more complicated than a simple fall from grace. Britain's Got Talent ran as one of ITV's flagship entertainment formats for years, and Walliams joined the judging panel in 2012, sitting alongside Simon Cowell in a pairing that worked precisely because of how different the two men were. Cowell played the cold-eyed industry professional, and Walliams played the crowd's ally, affectionate, self-deprecating, quick with a joke. Between 2012 and 2022, that dynamic earned him 4 Best Judge Awards at the National Television Awards, winning in 2015, 2018, 2019, and 2020. For a decade, the public considered him one of their own. That trust, built carefully over 10 years of live television, collapsed when The Guardian published leaked audio transcripts from an audition session recorded at the London Palladium. During a break in filming, while contestants had walked off stage and the judges believed their conversations were private, Walliams made a series of comments that were picked up by microphones positioned to capture discussions between the judges at their desks in the center of the auditorium. Those recordings existed because the production team routinely captured candid remarks for potential use in Britain's Got Talent or its various spin-off programs. What the recordings captured from Walliams went far beyond anything that could be passed off as banter. After an older performer walked off stage following an unsuccessful audition, a pensioner who had exchanged some lighthearted jokes with the panel, Walliams described him using an extreme expletive, not once but 3 times, once the man was out of earshot. With a second contestant, a woman who had just finished her audition, his remarks turned cruder still. He described her in terms that implied people would want to sleep with her but wouldn't, and then layered on a further dismissal, characterizing her as the type of person one meets at a pub who mistakes politeness for genuine interest. He added that people like her believe everyone wants a piece of them when, in reality, the opposite is true. Lawyers representing Walliams and Thames TV, the production company behind the show, argued that these remarks formed part of a private conversation that was never designed to reach the public. That argument carried some legal weight, but zero cultural weight, and the transcript spread quickly. The outrage that followed was immediate, and Walliams released a public apology acknowledging the comments, calling them disrespectful, and reiterating that they were private exchanges never meant to be broadcast. His statement also accepted that no private context excused the language, and that he was extremely sorry. Simon Cowell's company, Psycho Entertainment, co-producer of the show, released a statement through a spokesperson confirming they had been unaware of the conversation until contacted by The Guardian, and made clear that Britain's Got Talent, as a family program, did not tolerate that kind of language. Notably, the leaked transcripts contained no comparable remarks from Cowell or any other judge. Walliams alone had made those comments. What happened next surprised the industry. Rather than retreating quietly, Walliams filed a high court claim against Fremantle Media, the production company, under his legal name David Edward Williams. The case centered on data protection and specifically on the misuse of private information, along with breaches of the UK General Data Protection Regulation and the Data Protection Act of 2018. Court documents revealed that Walliams accused the company of causing him psychiatric harm and financial loss as a direct result of the leaked recordings. Fremantle, for their part, initially replaced him on the 2023 series with former Strictly Come Dancing judge Bruno Tonioli, announced in January of that year. The legal battle resolved when Fremantle issued a formal apology and settled the dispute. A spokesperson for the company stated they were pleased to have reached an amicable resolution, expressed sincere regret that his private conversations had been published, and apologized for the significant distress the situation had caused him. The settlement also pushed the production company to review its recording practices on set to ensure the privacy expectations of on-screen talent were properly respected. Long before the scandal, and running parallel to his television career, Walliams built a second identity entirely separate from the entertainment industry. His children's books, titles including Gangsta Granny and The Boy in the Dress, became publishing phenomena, and their theatrical and television adaptations gave him a creative output that no broadcast controversy could erase. In 2015, he took on the role of a villainous dinner lady in the adaptation of Billionaire Boy. The same year he appeared in the Agatha Christie television series Partners in Crime and watched the stage version of Gangsta Granny open to audiences. His literary career gave him a foundation that his television work never could. Books don't get canceled, and children who loved his stories had no interest in industry scandal. The roots of all of it trace back to a school stage in suburban Surrey, where an 11-year-old Walliams played a queen in a school production and walked off stage feeling, by his own account, 100 times happier than he could express. That moment, described in his 2012 autobiography Camp David, set everything in motion. Growing up in Surrey, his father worked as a transport engineer and his mother as a lab technician, and while money was never abundant, they paid for him to attend the independent Reigate Grammar School. He was shy as a child but carried an exhibitionist streak alongside it, writing sketches for school assemblies by the age of 13 and earning his first £5 doing comedy at a friend's 18th birthday party, performing jokes he had borrowed from Steve Martin. The friendship that would define his professional life began at the National Youth Theatre, where Walliams met Matt Lucas over a shared love of Monty Python, Rowan Atkinson, and the Carry On films. Their creative partnership worked, Walliams later explained, because Lucas was a stronger performer than writer, and Walliams was a stronger writer than performer. Each filled the gap the other left. Director Edgar Wright, who encountered the duo in the mid-1990s backstage after one of Lucas's gigs, directed their first television work together, Mash and Peas, and remembered both of them as natural performers who wrote without any concession to outside expectations. Wright also recalled that Walliams was consistently funny off camera, not just on it, and that his humor carried a genuinely mischievous edge that regularly brought them into conflict with censors. Director Matt Lipsey, who met Walliams around the same period, described him as someone who seemed to bounce off walls with energy. The path from that early promise to Little Britain wasn't straight. A pilot for BBC Radio 4 failed to get picked up, and several other projects, Sir Bernard's Stately Homes You Are Here, a spoof boy band documentary, didn't find audiences. Walliams filled the gap with small parts in The Bill, Casualty, and EastEnders. And then Little Britain landed, and everything changed, followed eventually by the American spin-off Little Britain USA. Television projects continued to accumulate. Stephen Poliakoff's Capturing Mary, a role in the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, a run of Harold Pinter's No Man's Land in London's West End alongside Sir Michael Gambon. His 2006 swim of the English Channel raised £1 million for sport relief charity. 5 years later, he swam the length of the Thames. These weren't publicity stunts. In interviews, Walliams described the Channel swim specifically as an act of redemption, something he could point to when the self-loathing that plagued him throughout his life grew louder than he could manage. That self-loathing has a long history. Walliams spoke about his depression publicly for the first time on national television during a 2019 episode of Bear Grylls' ITV program Bear's Mission, where he disclosed that he had attempted to take his own life during his university years. His mother, Kathleen, discovered him lying on his bed after he had taken an overdose that Christmas when he returned home from university, and she cried for weeks afterward. Walliams described it as one of the most selfish things he had ever done to her, while also crediting her love as the force that helped pull him through. Camp David, his autobiography, addressed this period in detail, describing depression not simply as sadness, but as fear. Fear of dying, fear of living, fear of love, fear of everything, and noting that for many people who suffer from it, the hardest hour arrives at 4 a.m. when there is no one to call. His mother had always been his closest ally. She encouraged his flamboyant tendencies from childhood, hiring a wedding dress for him when he was cast as a queen in a school production at his all-boys senior school. His father, Peter, remained skeptical that comedy could become a viable career. The contrast between his parents' responses shaped him early, and his bond with Kathleen remained central throughout his adult life. Court papers later allege that following his departure from Britain's Got Talent, Walliams experienced suicidal thoughts and that his microphone had been left running throughout filming days, a detail that fed directly into his legal case against Fremantle. In a Desert Island Discs interview on BBC Radio 4, Walliams spoke about how his relentless schedule and high-profile social life functioned as coping strategies for the depression that had followed him since childhood. He described a pathological fear of being alone, a certainty that if left too long with his own thoughts, he would begin to unravel. Staying creative, filling the diary, seeing people, these were the mechanisms he used to keep the darkness at a manageable distance. He had been depressed as a child without ever receiving a diagnosis, struggled to form friendships, and found his escape by locking himself in the bathroom to listen to Rowan Atkinson albums and rehearse comedy routines by himself. His first serious relationship with actress Katie Carmichael, whom he met during drama school, broke him open in the best possible way. 4 years together that, by his account, gave him the confidence he had spent his whole childhood lacking and pulled him out of the deepest isolation he had known. He portrayed the late comedian Frankie Howard in 2008 as part of BBC 4's Curse of Comedy series. Howard, who also battled depression throughout his life, a piece of casting that felt less like coincidence and more like recognition. What Walliams built across all of it, the comedy, the books, the television, the charity swims, the legal fight, was not the career of someone who floated easily through life. It was the work of someone who found in performance the only reliable antidote to a mind that regularly turned against him, and who kept building even when the ground fell away. The scandal did not erase him. Fremantle apologized, the settlement was reached, and the production practices that allowed those recordings to surface were reviewed and revised. His books remain on shelves, his adaptations continue to reach children who never watched Britain's Got Talent, and the version of David Walliams that exists now, older, legally embattled, publicly humbled, is arguably a more complete picture than the one who smiled through a decade of Saturday night television. Whether that picture is redemptive or cautionary depends entirely on what you believe people owe each other when no one is supposed to be listening.